Welcome to another CTC Software Rapid Introduction. In this session, we're going to talk about the project processor from CTC. In Revit, if you want to access the project processor, you can find this on the CTC Software tab. On the BIM Batch Suite, here's the project processor. The project processor will allow you the ability to go ahead and process a number of projects using a number of specific processes configured by you, the BIM admin. In projects here, you can add as many files as you'd like. You can add a folder of Revit projects, or you can open projects themselves, or I should say add the open project that's currently opened inside of Revit or any other number of open projects. To configure the processes here, you go to the Processes tab, and you can go through a number of different options for process configuration. The scripts area here will allow you to run a script before the actual processing is started for each individual model. If you're processing models that are not yet open in Revit, you could do things like maybe deleting files or moving a file to a specific location, whatever the case may be. You can also then do some things if you're maybe working with a non-work sharing enabled project and you want to remove backup files and maybe exclude or remove all backup files that might not necessarily be explicitly included in the selection that you've made, like just additional backups in that folder. You can have this go ahead and delete those if you want to. In my case, you can see I've turned off those two options. I'm not going to use them. You can also clean the models when they're open. So it'll automatically open up a model and then run through anything you're actually processing. To clean something, I can clean sheets, views, templates, all these different options here across the top. And this can be a rules-based cleaning. Like in this case for my sheets, I'm deleting any sheets that are empty. It doesn't matter who drew it, what the sheet number is, or what the name is. If it's empty, I'm deleting it. Similarly, I can do things with views, like deleting all views that don't have dependents, but are also not on sheets. And then similarly, if it is a dependent view and is not on a sheet, again, I can be cleaning that up. I can be deleting those. Templates, view templates, unused, filters, all that are based on certain properties, links. You can go through and set up these rules and add as many rules and as many usage options or, options that are in the drop downs that you want. There's also some settings here for swapping some components in your model. Maybe you want to go through and clean up an old standard. You want to swap old dimension types out for new dimension types, new dimension styles. Similarly, text types, line styles, fill patterns, materials can all be swapped out based on these rules. You can run an ultimate purge on your projects. This will run through and purge until there's nothing left to purge for any of these options. So if I tell it, for example, I only want to delete out all of the material assets that are unused in my project, I can do that, and it will go through and recursively delete things that are no longer needed. Similarly, I could say delete all families and symbols, and it would go through and purge those families if they're not being used. So you have the option of going through and making those choices. You can rename things in your project. Views, templates, filters, sheets. You can do any renaming you'd like to do. In my case, I'm renaming all floor plans that are not dependent using a certain rule set over here. I'm renaming all things that have dependent views, again, certain rule sets. So I can go through and set these up so that it'll rename in a way that I find meaningful. And in this case, I'm using views properties, the actual parameters on the view, to rename those views themselves. My final option that I'm using is for parameters. I'm going to go ahead and add 2 project parameters to my project, adding them as instance properties. I can vary between groups, grouping them a certain way. I can source their value from a parameter that already exists on the categories that's being used in this case. I can also add the source, the schedule column into a Revit schedule, a specific schedule if it's already being used there. It'll add these parameters in place of that source parameter. And I can do things like removing the source parameter, replacing it, and then deleting that actual original source valued parameter out of my project as a whole. I can do some modification of links, like finding and replacing paths. I can run a script after this is all done. And ultimately, when I'm done with all of these options, all I do is click Start, it runs, and it'll actually execute all of these changes. So how do you get access to this? Well, if you want to get your hands on the project processor, if you go to the CTC Software website, you'll be able to actually find that. You can go to ctcsoftware.com, from there, Products, and from there you can go to the BIM Batch Suite. You can actually find some more information about that on our website from this web page. You can also then download this for 14 days and try it out, see if it works well for you. With that, thank you for the time you've given us today to take a look at this rapid introduction to this tool. If you want to see more detailed information, certainly comment on this video or shoot us an email. We'd be glad to do a much more deep dive into the tool itself.